Well, there is lots of news at the NHL level to discuss this Friday. The final decision made to withdraw NHL participation in the Olympics. There's an early pause for Christmas, and World Juniors are about to kick off. We'll be talking about all of those things up next on Locked On NHL.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers, and I am so pleased to welcome Gil Martin of Locked On Isles, the new permanent co-host with me for the Friday show. Welcome, Gil.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be here and pleasure to work with you on a regular basis now. I am looking forward to that.
Should be good times. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. You can find Gil on Twitter at IceWarsNYI_NYR. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your podcasting platforms. You can watch us over on YouTube as well. All right, Gil. So a lot of things, moving pieces and parts, fast and furious this week in the NHL. We got an early pause for Christmas because of the COVID situation. And as a result of 50 games being postponed, the NHL invoked the hardship clause, or certain number of games postponed. I think the Flyers versus Caps one that was postponed on Tuesday was the 50th. So that kind of triggered the official cancellation of the NHL participation in the Olympics. How are you feeling about all this?
You know, I am simultaneously disappointed because I do enjoy watching the NHL players in the Olympics every 4 years, but also I think it was the right call. And with the Omicron variant spreading so easily, with so many NHL games being canceled, with the travel and the quarantining that would be required to have the players come back and forth and all the difficulties that would be involved, I just think it made sense. And sometimes, you know, discretion is the better part of valor. 4 years from now, hopefully we will have NHL players in the Olympics, but this year it just didn't make sense.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know. I do have mixed feelings about it in terms of their participation in general. I think that, you know, for me, I like not having the NHL players there, partially because it puts a brighter spotlight on the women's tournament, which is something that I personally enjoy. And I've talked about that before. And I tend to pay more attention to the women's tournament in the Olympics. But I also think that for a lot of these guys, it was something that was very important to them. And I certainly respect and understand that. And I am certainly sad for them. And especially, you know, a guy like Steven Stamkos, who never really got his shot because he was injured the last time around. And, you know, you'd be hard pressed to think he'd get another opportunity.
Yeah, it's not easy. You know, there's only so many chances you get in an event that happens once every 4 years. And you mentioned, you know, the player has to be healthy and they have to be on top of their game. And especially if you're playing for Canada, there are so many. It's such a deep roster pool to choose from. But yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. And as far as the women's tournament goes, I love watching the women's tournament every 4 years. And, you know, the rivalry between the United States and Canada is wonderful to watch and has been for 2 or 3 Olympics right now. So I'm enjoying that as well.
Definitely looking forward to that. As far as the other league activities, as of now, the All-Star Game is still happening in Vegas at the beginning of February. They did cancel the AHL All-Star Game. It was supposed to be held in Laval. This is the second year in a row for them. I feel so bad, but it is in Canada, and you know the COVID situation in the AHL is no better than the NHL. So it just kind of feels like one of those things where their schedules are less flexible, and to be able to make up some of those games, they just needed that time anyway.
Yeah, and the AHL tries to emphasize more weekend games to try to, because they're more dependent on box office than television for their revenue, and it makes sense for them. And look, unfortunately, player safety gets pushed to the back of the priority list sometimes, and to me that has to be more important. I want to make sure that these players, their families, their friends, their loved ones are all safe, or as safe as we can make them under the circumstances, because these are not easy times. Let's put it that way.
They are not. I'm just wondering, looking ahead to even next week, do you think they'll be playing any NHL games next week?
I hope so, but at best, I think it's a coin flip right now. I mean, it really, if this continues to spread as quickly as it seems to be spreading, this new variant, then they may not be able to. And I just, again, hope that they keep player safety as a primary thing they take into consideration when they determine whether or not they're going to delay the start of or the resumption of the season a few more days, or even put it off longer if they have to. But simultaneously, I hope they don't have to.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way that, they did say that the teams will be coming back a day early on the 26th to start testing again. But again, that, testing is so, the rapid testing is so unreliable right now in terms of the incubation period of Omicron, and it's all different. And there's a slightly different science to it in terms of transmissibility and which days and all of that. And so I just think things are so up in the air on that front for next week. What I do think is that they're going to just move mountains, literally, to make the Winter Classic go ahead. And that is scheduled to be January 1st in Minneapolis between the Wild and the St. Louis Blues.
I hope they can pull that off. I mean, it is a great event for the NHL. It is now sort of the one annual event where the sports world knows the NHL has a showcase on that day. And I think that's a great thing for the league. And perhaps the one thing that I think may make it easier to make that game happen is that it's outdoors. And that makes it easier for the fans, a little less transmissibility there. The weather is certainly not going to be 75 degrees and sunny. So it'll be cold, but it'll be outdoors. The players will be outdoors. The fans will be outdoors. And that may make it a little bit easier to try to go ahead and play that game. But again, to me, safety has to be the number one consideration, even though there's a lot of money, obviously, at stake with the television coverage and with how many tickets they've already sold for that event. You don't want to put it off if you don't have to, but you got to make player safety and fan safety primary.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think they're going to make this game happen no matter what. And those two teams happen to be pretty low in terms of people out for COVID right now. So I feel like they're just going to put them in a cage or like a windowless room to protect them at all costs.
The mini bubble.
Yes. Just thinking about, the Olympics and all of this crazy news and all of, the lost opportunities for these players. Do you think they're going to try and make a World Cup of Hockey happen again sooner than maybe they had anticipated?
I think they might. It would certainly be a way to, not quite make up for the loss of the Olympics, but to compensate for it. And I think that, the whole key, though, is that they've got to make sure that COVID is no longer a serious threat. If they can do that, if they know, that COVID is under control or a thing of the past, set it up. But if they are still up in the air and they don't know what the next variant is or whether or not we can get this under control, the last thing they think the NHL wants to do is spend a lot of time and a lot of money creating something that they can't pull off.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I just remember it was such a fun tournament. And, I got to go to a couple of the games, including one of the Team North America games, which is probably one of my favorite teams to have ever seen in person in my lifetime. It was just so much superstar power on that team that I really think it could be a good time.
Absolutely. I would love to see it. I just hope they can get it done.
Me too. Well, with this break that we have right now, we're going to get into, where the standings are right now. And, are there any surprises? Are there any predictions we have moving forward? We'll get to that up next. But, it is the holiday season right now. And for me, I'm running around all over the place at the moment. And the perfect thing to have along with me is Built Bar. It tastes like a candy bar. Actually, you know what? I think it tastes even better than a candy bar. It's filled with so much holiday goodness and it's covered in chocolate, but it's amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, but also high in protein. You get the best of both worlds. And they have so many flavors to choose from. Are you going to have a raspberry or mint brownie, a cherry or double chocolate, the cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie? Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all those last minute shoppers. So throw one in your jacket or your purse. You never know when you're going to need it. And if you want to cozy up with something warm when you get home, dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. You let it melt a little bit, and then your hot chocolate has a little bit of Built Bar flavor. And if you like some of those marshmallowy treats, get your hands on Built Bar Puffs. They are light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Taste so good, you won't believe they're filled with protein. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
And this episode is also brought to you by Stat Hero. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. But Stat Hero is the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you against the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup, winner take all. And here's the crazy part. Stat Hero shows you their lineups before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. This never-before-seen innovation of a fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid has Stat Hero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better. Why? Because you don't have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns, and it is just you in control of your own fate. With Stat Hero, you're in control of the stakes. You decide how much you're going to play for, and Stat Hero has no choice but to take it because they are daring you to beat them. Stat Hero is head-to-head. It's what daily fantasy should be, one-on-one. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/hockey. Use promo code hockey for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/hockey. Use promo code hockey for your 100% match. stathero.com/hockey. Promo code hockey. Terms and conditions apply.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. And you can find us wherever you are listening to podcasts or on YouTube. All right, Gil. So we have this pause, and I think it gives us a little bit of time to reflect. And we did not have power rankings this week due to not having any games. So I thought we'd take things aren't going to change when you're not playing. So looking at the standings right now, we're going to go through each of the divisions and just kind of, see if there's any surprises, who's at the top, who's at the bottom, who's going to turn things around. And we're doing things in order of point percentage. Gil and I were talking before the show started, and it makes more sense to do it that way just because there's a bigger variance in games played due to some of the postponements. So that's the way we're going to do it. So let's start off with our home division, because why not? It's our show. We get to do that, right? And unfortunately, neither of our teams is at the top of the division. We're closer to the bottom. That's okay. We'll get there. But Carolina is atop the Metropolitan Division right now. And they've, got a little bit of breathing room between them and the next two teams, but certainly not running away with it.
Yeah, and Carolina just gets overlooked sometimes. I really like this team. They have the best goal differential in the division. And the other thing is, they get it done both at home and on the road. It doesn't seem to affect them. They're a balanced team. They're getting some good goaltending. I think this is a team that deserves a little bit more national attention than they get.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that, they got some attention in past seasons because of not hockeying things like the storm surge and, other off ice things. And I think they're a really good team. And they haven't been as consistent recently as they were at the beginning of the season. That's for sure. But at the same time, they're finding ways to win. Now, I think at the other end of the division is the biggest surprise, right? Which, unfortunately, Gil, is your New York Islanders.
Yeah, this has sort of been a Murphy's Law kind of a season for the Islanders. Things started off okay, and then COVID hit, and obviously starting the season with a 13-game road trip wasn't easy. But I think there's a little more to it than that. And, I see some of the moves that the Islanders made in the offseason. And, they haven't exactly worked out. Zach Parise, Kyle Palmieri, not really getting the job done offensively. Between them, they have 2 goals through the first 26 games. And then, you lose Nick Leddy, who's a very mobile, puck-moving defenseman who can skate quickly. And you replace him in the lineup with Zdeno Chara. That means, Chara, at this stage in his career, not the most mobile guy, not going to be able to move the puck very well. There are some elements missing right now in this team's game. They've played better as of late since most of the players got healthy from COVID, but they're still only playing a little bit above 500 for the month of December. And when you have an 11-game winless streak, you've got to put a winning streak together, and they're not quite able to do that just yet.
Yeah, the other team I want to talk about in this division is the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is unfortunate for both of us, I think, but this is a team on the move. They have a 7-game win streak currently and looking like they're turning things around. They had, some, I think, missed opportunities earlier in the season. They weren't looking as good, but right now, their last 10, they were 7-2-1. And I just think they're kind of getting it together. And a lot of people are talking about them as contenders. What do you think?
I think, look, the talent is there. They started off the season with some players injured, some key players injured, missing from the lineup. And that, no Crosby, no Malkin. That certainly takes away from any team. To me, the question with the Penguins is always depth. They have the top line talent. The reason I think also that they're coming on as of late, they're getting some pretty good goaltending, which last year was a little bit more inconsistent. So I think they are a contender, but the Metropolitan Division is so tough and so deep. It may be tough to get out of the division or even to finish first or second in the division. They could still have a great season and finish fourth.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's very scary and for the rest of us, like I said. But honestly, it's pretty impressive given their circumstances. So sometimes you do, in fact, have to hand it to them.
Did that hurt to say that?
It did. It did a little bit, but...
Well, what about your Flyers now? Let's talk a little bit about the Flyers. Let's.
I think they are. They're performing below expectation as far as the club itself goes. That's for sure. There's been a lot of injury woes. Luckily, the Flyers, haven't been hit too hard by COVID, so that hasn't been the excuse. It's just more about inconsistent play, and then losing Ryan Ellis, I think, was a big part of the defensive side of things. There were some issues with people not scoring. The power play was dreadful. Then they fired Alain Vigneault in the middle of a 5 games in 7 day stretch, which is not ideal timing when you're trying to turn things around and do a reset. So it really took them, a few games to start doing that. I will say, the last few games, the game against Montreal looked terrible, but other than that, there was a couple really good performances in there where they got some solid play. So I worry about this pause in a lot of ways in terms of losing momentum, in terms of improving things. But at the same time, it could help them and just have all the guys get a mental reset and come back fresh.
Yeah, we'll see what happens once play resumes, and hopefully that will be next week. So
yes. All right, moving to the Atlantic Division, Tampa on top. Not shocking in any way, shape, or form. I think they've been playing really well, and of course they are backstopped by Andrei Vasilevsky, who just seems to have like unbeatable game after unbeatable game.
He keeps you in almost every game he starts, and that's sort of the backbone of a successful team. They're two-time defending champions for a reason. Started off sort of in the middle of the division standings because some other teams got off to such hot starts, but not surprising to see the cream rising to the top.
Yeah, and your other top teams, Toronto and Florida, again, not surprising. I think I think the Atlantic is probably, except for one team, which we're going to talk about next, I think is the most predictable in terms of order. The team at the bottom, I think, is a little shocking compared to where you might have thought at the very beginning of the season. And that's the Montreal Canadiens.
Look, losing Price as their goaltender early in the season while he takes care of some personal issues and mental health issues, that definitely affected this team. And, that's a big reason why they are off to a slow start, and most importantly, hopefully, Carey Price takes care of things and gets well again. But yeah, the Canadiens have had a lot of turmoil, a difficult start to this season, and this may be one of those years where you just sort of have to say, well, let's start thinking about how we get ready for next season and fine tuning this team so that they can compete next year rather than this year.
Yeah, and I know the new management group is eager to do all of that, which of course had a big turnover in the middle of this season. And, in this past offseason, I don't think they did a particularly good job of replacing the kind of guys that they lost to other teams. And I think that's a big part of it too, that they just haven't been scoring and their defense is weak, especially, Shea Weber not playing either was a big part of it. So I will be interested to see how their next offseason goes. But in the meantime, I'm not sure they're getting out of that basement in the division this season, especially with Ottawa playing half-decent hockey these days.
Yeah, Ottawa's waking up a little bit. They're playing better. So that's encouraging.
They are. All right, let's go over to the West and the Central Division. Up top right now, again, this is point percentage, not points overall. And so that would be the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, only 27 games played. So they've got 3 or 4 games on hand on all the other top contending teams. And again, Colorado, one of those teams that you expect as the season goes on, they're going to rise to the top. They are so deep and talented, still technically on straight points in 4th place, but they're a team to be reckoned with. And they're getting the goaltending is starting to come around after, they changed goaltenders in the offseason, and it seems like they're finding their sweet spot with the goaltending as of late.
Yeah, and they are neck and neck in that top spot percentage-wise with the Minnesota Wild, which I think is a team that we would have expected to be at the top as well. I think looking at this division in the preseason, you would have to have guessed that those would be your 2 top teams, and here we are.
Yeah, and the Wild were red hot a week or 2 ago. They've cooled off a little bit as of late, but again, one of those teams that you just absolutely expect will be there. When we head into the home stretch, they'll be fighting for first place in this division. I get that feeling.
I think so too. A team that I would not have expected to be in the hunt in this division, but is the Nashville Predators. They are on a 7-game win streak as well, 8-2-0 in their last 10, and they're just impressing the hell out of me right now.
Well, I've gotten to see them play the Islanders, and yeah, they impressed me as well. They are a tenacious team. They are physical. They get the job done. And, it's that old cliche. They're not easy to play against. And when a team is like that and plays that style of hockey, even if you beat them, you're exhausted and you just feel like, wow, that was not easy. And yeah, more often than not, when you play that style and you play it well, you're going to win a lot of hockey games.
Absolutely agree with you there. I think the team at the bottom of this division is the least surprising thing in all of the standings here, but Arizona, they're just having a rough go of it. Their goal differential is -53.
Yeah, not pretty. And thankfully, at least over the very short term, their arena situation appears to have stabilized. At least they'll finish this season, hopefully, without getting kicked out of their rink. But yeah, look, Arizona's never going to admit that they're tanking, but they are in rebuilding mode, and they are not.
They have a million draft picks stocked up.
And they need all of them. So it's 2 or 3 years from now, we will start talking about how much young talent is stocking the roster of the Arizona Coyotes. But as of right now, they are a long way from being a competitive hockey team.
100%. All right. Last up is the Pacific Division. And this one, I think, is a lot more competitive than I might have guessed at the beginning of this season. Right now, Calgary is up top percentage-wise, but Vegas and the Ducks are still hanging in there as well.
They are. And did you expect the Ducks to be this high in the standings?
No, not this long. Yeah, and I think that when they got off to such a hot start, people thought, oh, this is just a fluke. Once it's a few weeks into the season, they'll drop down. No, that did not happen. And I think they're playing very well together as a team. And I think that's been the key to it, as well as getting, key contributions from guys like Trevor Zegras, who I think, is playing. He was expected to play well, but I think he's doing a lot better in this season than maybe I would have expected, just development-wise.
Yeah, he's coming along a little quicker than I think some people expected. It made a nice jump from last year to this year, and it's made a big difference. One team I wanted to ask you about, Vancouver, they change coaches. They bring in Bruce Boudreau, 6 wins in a row.
Yeah.
Is this just like you think this is a short-term reaction to the coaching change, or do you think this team can actually get back into the competition for a playoff spot this year?
I think it's going to depend on a lot of things for them. I think it's good that they're winning. I think hockey is better when Vancouver is good, to be honest, because them being a part of the conversation is a good thing. But I wonder if it was too late in some ways. But it also depends on how the other teams do. In my opinion, I think the Kings are going to just slowly fade away a little bit. Don't tell Sarah from Locked On LA Kings that. But I don't know if what they've been doing is sustainable for the remainder of the season. Edmonton is always a roller coaster ride, and you never know what team you're going to get. So I think it's really, looking at those two teams, I think will be a real big indicator of whether Vancouver has a chance.
Yeah, I think you're right. And but they've got to keep on winning, obviously. It's never easy to make up points. When you have that point for losing in overtime or in a shootout, it gets harder to make up 7 points, 8 points over the course of the season, because there are 2-point games and there are 3-point games.
Yeah. So do you have a particular division that you think is the most chaotic?
The most chaotic. For chaotic, the Pacific Division may be the most chaotic. I think the Atlantic may be the best. But you know what? There are so many. The Metropolitan is deep. There are so many good divisions here. Central has 4 or 5 strong teams. This is a fun season. If COVID wasn't a thing, I'd be enjoying this season a lot more even. But
truer words have not been spoken. Do you think there's a team that is maybe in the middle or languishing a little bit that could turn it around in January, that you see the seeds?
Wow. That is a very good question. Oh man. You know what? It is hard for me to let go. I'll give you two teams, both of them in the West. Edmonton, it's hard for me to let go of. There's just so much talent there, and yet it's so they're incomplete and yet so talented. And then another club that I think could be a dark horse if they get things together is Dallas.
Yes.
They're not far off right now from a playoff spot, and you just get the feeling just a little tweak here and there, and they could be very, very good.
Yeah, I think they've been a little inconsistent. That some days they look like Stanley Cup champions, and then other days I don't even know who they are. So I think they just need to, balance things out a little bit better, and they'd be in good shape. I'm going to take a hint from you for my pick, and that's the Ottawa Senators. I think, they're a team that I don't think they're going to do great things in the playoffs, but I do think they're going to make a decent enough run and show that they are a much better team that people had gave them credit for at the beginning of the season.
I think they're 1 year away from real playoff contention, but I think you're right. They'll make it interesting this year.
Yeah, I might actually play some bets on Ottawa coming up. We will be talking a little bit about, there's a New York Times article related to Alex Ovechkin and the Wayne Gretzky goals record. We're going to get to that, as well as a little bit of World Juniors talk. But, speaking of those bets, BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues the march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball and football to the NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Gil. So, there was a really interesting article in the New York Times this week that talked to Alex Ovechkin and him potentially reaching Wayne Gretzky's 894 goals in his NHL career, where he is now, where they think, he could gain in those goals. And I think the big news out of this article was the quote directly from Gretzky, where he said that it's not even a question that he will pass me. And I think it's great. He's well on his way to 40 or 50 goals this year, maybe more. There's no doubt that ultimately he will break the record.
Yeah, and Gretzky's always been a gracious guy. He was never one to brag or beat his own chest, so to speak. Confident, but never, but always gracious. And he's handling it in a very mature way. And one thing I've learned watching him since the very beginning of his career: don't bet against Alexander Ovechkin.
No, he's 36 years old, which you're like, oh, I don't know. Can he do it? But he stayed in very good shape for the majority of his career. He already has 22 goals this season, heading into the pause. He's only one goal behind Draisaitl, who is leading the NHL in goals right now, which, I wouldn't honestly have predicted he'd be at that high of a level at the beginning of the season. I always think he scores a lot, but maybe not league leading type of stats. And, I think it is possible. It's hard to say for sure. Like, nobody can predict the future, but he is on pace to score 58 this season.
Yeah. And that's so impressive. And, you think about one of the differences between the era when Gretzky played, the 80s into the 90s, a lot more goal scoring back then than there is now. So, a 50-goal season for Ovechkin is a little bit more impressive than a 50-goal season would have been for Gretzky back then. So I give Alexander Ovechkin a whole lot of credit, and it'll be fun for hockey fans around the world, really, to watch him chase this record over the next 2 or 3 years.
Honestly, I think that's the best part of it, right? It's a real solid story that people can focus their attention on. Ovi is such a fun guy too. Like you want to root for him, and especially now when he's got like his kid at the rink all the time, and it just like endears you to him even more, I think.
It does. And he's a great interview. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to be in a swim with Ovi or speak to him. He's entertaining. He's fun. He doesn't take himself so seriously, and you tell he loves playing hockey when you speak to him. And so it's contagious when you're around him.
He really is. And, it's sometimes like you are begrudging fans of guys on other teams, but I just like, you can't be that with Ovi. Like as much as I don't like the Caps, I will always be an Alex Ovechkin fan.
Got to respect what he's done on and off the ice. Absolutely.
All right, let's get into World Juniors real quickly before we wrap things up for the show. They're kicking off on Sunday, and Tyler Kuehl of the aforementioned Locked On Capitals is covering the tournament for the Locked On NHL crew. We're excited to bring you a whole bunch of special episodes throughout the tournament, so check out those in your feed. They'll be coming up over the next couple of weeks. But do want to give us a chance to give our 2 cents on the tournament before it gets started. The two groups are really different, I think, this year. I think Canada got off a little easier than Team USA, but Canada is in Group A with Finland, Germany, Czechia, and Austria, while Team USA is in Group B with Sweden, Slovakia, Russia, and Switzerland. Do you have any predictions, thoughts, prayers going into it?
Well, I think you're right about Canada having an easier road than the United States. I would expect the United States to at least make, the medal round, so to speak, but it's a tough division. It's a very, very deep and tough division or group. And, I love the World Juniors and I enjoy watching them. And then it's also fun to wait like 5 years and go back and say, oh, wow, I didn't remember this guy was in the World Juniors, or that these two guys were teammates or players who you barely knew when you were watching the tournament. All of a sudden, they're household names to hockey fans everywhere 5 years later. So to me, it's a great sort of peek into the future, and I look forward to it every year.
I feel the same way, and there's a lot of pageantry and just like fun things outside of the games in terms of, people rooting for underdog teams in the past. Like I remember in the last several years, just everybody rallying around Germany to win some games, and Kazakhstan one year.
Yep.
And I just think it's a lot of fun. For me, I think maybe this year I'm going to have my backup team be Slovakia.
Okay.
I think that'll be fun. And in the other group, maybe Austria. Yeah,
Austria should be interesting. If they get the goaltending, they can stay in a lot of games, and they have a good goalie. So I think that's a possibility. I like your choices.
Yeah, that's the key to being a good underdog, is having amazing goaltending to steal games for you.
Absolutely. And without the Olympics, I think, for people who are very passionate about their country's hockey program, now the World Juniors become even more important.
I agree with you there. I think that'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And Gil, such a pleasure to have you around on Fridays. We'll both be back next Friday to recap the week that was. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. And Gil, where can people find you?
It's Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI, and also at Locked On Isles for my regular Monday through Friday podcast. And I'll tell you, it was a pleasure working with you. I'm looking forward to doing this every week, and want to wish all our listeners who are celebrating a very Merry Christmas.
Absolutely.
Want to thank everyone also for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. That is going to do it for us on today's show. Rachel, thank you so much. And everyone stay safe. Have a great weekend. And I'll be back Monday here on Locked On NHL to do the Monday show. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Take care, everyone, and thanks for listening.
Have a great weekend, everyone.